St. Paul, the great apostle to the nations, his feast day is today, annually 29th of June. He was not originally a disciple of Christ. In fact, he was a persecutor of Christians. This is by theologian Professor Skonzu. The great apostle of the Gentiles, St. Paul, did not belong to the chorus of the 12 apostles. He did not know the Lord while he lived on earth, but he was later revealed to him and was called to be his apostle, being an opponent of the church originally. He was born around 15 AD in Tarsus, Cilicia, to Hebrew parents. His name was Saul, having also the Roman name Paul. His wealthy parents gave him a high education. Also, the remarkable Hellenistic spiritual climate of Tarsus had a positive effect on the formation of his personality. He spoke Greek fluently. In fact, in the New Testament, an Egyptian asked him if he was Greek. Now, he belonged to the sect of the Pharisees. Around 34 AD, he found himself in Jerusalem studying under the famous law teacher Gamaliel, one of the high priests. The young Pharisee Paul showed special zeal for saving his religion, and we find him a participant in the stoning of the first martyr Stephen, and a little later a fanatical persecutor of Christians. Carried away by his excessive zeal and what he believed concerning the followers of Jesus, he asked the high priest to be placed at the head of the detachment which would march to Damascus, Syria, to arrest the Hebrews who had become Christians and drag them bound back to Jerusalem. But on the way there, he saw a blinding light, which blinded him. At the same time, he heard the voice saying to him, "Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me?" The horrified Paul asked, "Who are you, Lord?" And he answered, "I am Jesus whom you are persecuting." And this is Acts 9:4-6. This shocking event shocked Paul. He repented, and after entering the city, he met with the head of the church, Ananias, who miraculously cured him of his blindness and taught him catechism and baptized him. From then on, Paul put himself to be at the service of the church. After careful preparation, he undertook the Christianizing of the Gentiles, and this is the non-Hebrews, of course. After retiring to the Arabian desert and accompanied by Barnabas and Mark, he set out in 48 AD on his first apostolic tour. Their first stop was Salamis and then Paphos in Cyprus, where they preached and founded churches, and then they passed through Asia Minor, that's today's Istanbul in that area, and toured the cities of Pergia and Pamphylia, Antioch in Pisidia, Iconium, Lystra, Derbe, and elsewhere. Despite all the difficulties they encountered and the persecutions they suffered, their preaching was successful. In all the cities they established local churches. Through Antalya, they returned to Antioch. He then took part in the Council of Jerusalem, 48 AD, which resolved serious missionary issues. St. Paul played a decisive role in this. He managed to convince that the mission of Judaism is over and that God's grace comes to every person who joins Christ, how the coercive law of the Old Testament gave way to the freedom of God's grace. And then, with his partner Silas, he left for his second apostolic tour. Through Syria and Cilicia, he toured the Asian cities of Derbe and Lystra, and there they met the pious young man Timotheus, whom they took with them. They passed through Phrygia, Galatia, reached Mysia, and then Troy. Following a vision, they passed into Macedonia, northern Greece, and founded churches in Philippi, Salonika, Veria, Athens, and Corinth, in which they stayed about a year and a half in the house of Aquila and Priscilla in Corinth. And with the end of the second tour, Paul arrived in Ephesus of Asia Minor, and from there, via Caesarea, back to Jerusalem. Then he returned to Antioch. He soon made his third journey tour. He visited Gaul of Asia Minor, Phrygia, and ended up in Ephesus, where he stayed for 3 years teaching and supporting the believers. Then he came to Troy, passing again to Philippi, Salonika, Veria of northern Greece, and then Epirus, and ended in Corinth, where he stayed 3 months. Through Troy, Miletus, and Caesarea, he reached Jerusalem again, and there he was arrested as a rioter and brought to trial. As a Roman citizen, he demanded to be tried in the imperial court of Rome. That is why he left as a captive by coastal ferry to the capital of the empire, Rome that is. Near the island of Miletus, the ship was wrecked, and they went ashore, where he preached and founded a church there as well. He finally arrived in Rome, where after 2 years of relative comfort he was tried and acquitted. From Rome he sailed to Crete, where he left his associate Titus as bishop, went up to Corinth in Macedonia, and probably visited Nicopolis in Epirus in the autumn of 66 AD, where he overwintered. And then he again passed into Asia Minor, where he left Timothy, having made him bishop of Ephesus. The fourth and last tour of the great apostle ended in Spain. Then, defeated and crushed by the hardships, he ended up in Rome. The persecutions against Christians that Nero had preached were in full swing. Paul became the main target of the pagans. So around 67 AD, he was captured and beheaded, thus sealing his titanic mission work with his martyrdom. And this great apostle also left us 14 letters, which occupy an important place in the canon of the New Testament. These are Romans, Corinthians 1, Corinthians 2, Galatians, Ephesus, Philippians, Colossians, Thessalonians 1, Thessalonians 2, Timothy 1, Timothy 2, Titus, Philemon, and Hebrews. His solemn memory is celebrated together with that of the other great apostle, the disciple Peter, on June 29 annually. And what happened during his martyrdom? As we said, he was beheaded. When the Roman soldiers were leading the apostle Paul out of Rome, they met a woman who was blind in the right eye and named Perpetua. And the apostle Paul said to Perpetua, "Woman, give me your handkerchief, and when I come back, I will give it to you." When they arrived at the place of condemnation, they tied the eyes of the apostle Paul with this handkerchief, and then they beheaded him. What did God do to glorify the apostle? The handkerchief was found invisibly blood-stained in the hands of Perpetua, who, rubbing her eyes with it, regained her sight in her right eye. And when the soldiers returned, they found her healed, kissing the handkerchief. Seeing this miracle, the soldiers believed and said, "Great is God, the one preached under Paul." When the Emperor Nero, who had ordered the death of the apostle, heard this, he became angry and ordered that all 5 of those soldiers be condemned to death, but each of them with a different death, one to be beheaded, one to be thrown in the fire, one to be stoned, one to be torn in 4, and the last to be skinned alive. The same fate had Perpetua, who preached Christ loudly, and for this reason the emperor ordered that a millstone be tied around her neck, and she would be thrown into the Tiber River in Rome. In a vernacular language adopted by the great Synaxarius Church, we all know Saint Perpetua from this time. Amazing miracles. This again, Apostle Paul, his feast day is annually June 29, as is the apostle, the first disciple of Christ, Saint Peter. Please leave your comments. Thank you for your support. Please support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support, and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.